DB Cooper, the real final story. DB Cooper was an unidentified man who hijacked a Boeing 727 aircraft in the airspace between Portland, Oregon and Seattle, Washington on November the 24th, 1971. Remember that date, November 24th. He wanted $200,000 in ransom, which is equivalent to about $1.5 million today, and he parachuted to an uncertain fate. Despite an extensive manhunt and protracted FBI investigation, the perpetrator has never been located or identified. The case remains the only unsolved air piracy case in the aviation history, according to the FBI. According to the FBI. There's a lot of people that will disagree with the FBI. Cooper demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000. He wanted all the luggage on the plane taken off the plane. And when he got that money and the luggage off, he let all the passengers go except for the flight crew and the stewards. And this is important. He said, and this is Cooper now, he said in the back of the plane, 3 seats from the rear on the right side against the window. And when he talked to the stewardess, he had her sit beside him. He gave the blow information on landing in Seattle. He told them where to park the plane, what runway. He told how many people he wanted to refuel, and he wanted it to be refueled. He told which side of the plane to park the fuel truck on. He told which runway to use on takeoff. When they took off, he gave them a flight plan. He said, I want you to travel at this speed, flaps at this degree, and he basically gave them a flight plan. One keynote is he gave this information on FAA paper, Federal Aviation Administration paper. After taking off, he stated if we're followed by jets or helicopters, he always used the plural, we will blow up the plane. Somewhere over northwest United States, there was a thump. A light went on, plane shook a little bit, indicating there was a door open. They go back and look, he's still there. And only 3 people. He asked for 4 parachutes, which they gave him. And when you say that, people always think we give him a bad parachute. But being asked for 4, well, is he going to take somebody with him? So we better give him 4 good ones. He was a smart man. In some respects, he was a smart man. This happened one more time. The last time they went back to check, parachutes were gone and Cooper was gone. Nobody was back there. There were a total of 4 parachutes. All were bright pink that were never recovered. Nobody just never found them. But Cooper left 2 pieces of evidence on the plane. And the FBI kept this a secret because back in the late 60s, early 70s, the big thing to do was to hijack a plane and take it to Cuba. I never understood that because when you got to Cuba, you were met by a lot of green uniforms with machine guns and they put you in prison. That's what they thought this was happening, and they needed to be copycat hijackers. So they needed something that could tie this particular hijacking to Cooper. So they never told anybody what those 2 pieces of evidence were. He's never been heard from since, except in 1980, an 8-year-old kid found $5,800 in $20 bills that matched up the Cooper ransom. And that was found in the Columbia River on a sandbar. It's called Tina Bar. There is a composite drawing of Dan Cooper, and the people on the plane, the people that he sold the ticket, said this is amazing. It looks just like a photograph of Dan Cooper. And his name, he bought the ticket under Dan Cooper. A news media interviewing a police officer that night, and the police officer mistakenly referred to him as DB Cooper, and that stuck. There's the bulletin. That's hard to see, but some things that you should notice: age, mid-40s, height 5'10" to 6 foot, weight 170 to 180, complexion olive, had a dark appearance, eyes possibly brown. He wore sunglasses. Voice low, spoke intelligently, no particular accent. Heavy smoker. He smoked Raleigh filter tip cigarettes. And this is key, wearing a black suit, white shirt, narrow black tie, a dress suit, black suit. He was carrying a black raincoat over his arm, had a dark briefcase, attaché case, and had brown shoes. Remember that. There's a 727, basically one just like that. That's the Northwest 727, which he actually came out of. And that's where he left. That door opens down, and it opened in mid-flight, and he stood there and jumped to an uncertain fate. This is basically where the DB Cooper story ends, as told by the FBI. They pursued many leads, but it ends here according to them. There's no evidence after that anybody can put their hands on. Let's talk about Richard McCoy now. McCoy grew up in the Cove City area of Craven County, and he knew that area like any of us that would grow up out in the country. He knew that area, he explored it, knew it like the back of his hand. McCoy eventually joined the Army and left the area. Later, he was married to Karen, and they had 2 kids, Shantae and Richard III. In 1972, they were living in Provo, Utah. And Richard was a student at Brigham Young, another key I need you to remember. And times were tough for a family of 5. His sister-in-law, Denise, so his wife, 2 kids, and his sister-in-law, Denise, were all living together. And basically, the only income he had was his military VA education benefits, which was about, I think it was somewhere around $400. So they were hurting for money. On April 7th, 1972, during a stopover in Denver, Colorado, McCoy boarded United Airlines Flight 855 using the alias James Johnson. The aircraft was a Boeing 727 with aft stairs, the same equipment used in the DB Cooper incident. This time he demanded 4 parachutes and that all the luggage be taken off the plane, but he wanted his luggage placed inside the cabin of the plane. And he wanted $500,000. When he got that, he let everybody go but the stewardesses and the flight crew. Again, he wanted $500,000. That says Denver, but it was actually going to Los Angeles. He diverted to San Francisco. He had a novelty hand grenade, and he called the stewardess back, pulled the pin, and said, "Give this to the captain." And he held on to the grenade. The FBI were trying to delay because they were positive they had DB Cooper, and that's who they were dealing with. McCoy gave the following information for the pilots. We have a grenade, using the plural. We have a grenade. The pin has been pulled. We have pistols. They're loaded. We have C4 plastic explosives. It's a long ways to the ground. We're taking this plane to San Francisco, not Los Angeles. Secure permission to land on runway 18 at exactly 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're familiar with the airport and we'll know if we're being tricked. Have a fuel truck waiting with 6 hours of jet fuel, only 2 people on the truck. After landing, all vehicles will be parked on 100 feet from the nose of the plane on the left side. We want $500,000 in cash, different denominations, 4 commander parachutes with stopwatch and wrist altimeter. Get them from Perry Stevens Equipment Company in Oakland. And it was verified that he had been there about 2 weeks before the hijacking. The stewardess, I'll give the notes to, I'll call her Jane, will be the only one we'll talk to. We will talk to. You'll read quickly and return all notes to me. Don't tell the passengers what's going on. Have everything ready when we land in San Francisco. Basically, have you seen this before? He told them where to park the plane, told them how many people he wanted to refuel the plane. He told them which side of the plane to park the fuel truck on. He told which runway to use on takeoff. He told them when you do take off, I want you to fly at this speed and I want the flaps in this degrees. Basically gave him a flight plan, and he did it on FAA paper. McCoy demanded $500,000 for parachutes. The FBI got a little smarter this time. They put tracking devices in the parachutes. They were trying to delay the takeoff. Everything they could. McCoy became agitated and he told him to take off now, and he gave him the following note. He also had bought a magazine, and it was in a brown paper bag. He ripped off part of the paper bag and wrote this: "Everybody off now except the stewardesses. Stay put, get the heck off the ground, be quick about it, use this runway." He gave that to the stewardess. She went up and gave it to the pilot, and the pilot read it, and not thinking how valuable that was, threw it in the trash. The stewardess left it there for about 15 minutes. About 15 minutes later, she thought about it. She went and got it, took it out of the trash, and put it inside her blouse so she could have that. And McCoy never thought to ask for that piece of paper back. Again, Northwest 727. Guess where he sat? He sat in the back of the plane, 3 seats from the rear on the right side. This time, instead of putting the stewardess beside him, because he had read where she was sitting beside him, eyeballing him for a description, this time he put her 1 seat ahead so he could talk to her up there. Somewhere over Utah, there was a thump. A light came on indicating the door was open. One of the tracking devices on the parachute activated. This happened 3 more times. After the 4th time, they go back, all parachutes are gone, McCoy is still there. Later, another thump, they go back and look, and McCoy is gone. They found no evidence on the plane this time. Now, remember, in the Cooper hijacking, there was 2 pieces of evidence that was put in the FBI evidence locker and never told what those 2 pieces of evidence was. McCoy left nothing on the plane. McCoy had a neighbor that was a Utah State Trooper, and 2 weeks prior to the hijacking, they were out on the sidewalk one day in front of McCoy's house, just shooting the breeze, and McCoy brought up the hijacking, and he was telling the trooper, you know, this is a foolproof plan, you can do this and not get caught, and the trooper didn't want to talk about hijacking the plane, so he just sort of passed it off. He changed the subject. When the trooper heard of this hijacking from Denver, he got to thinking about it, so he called the FBI and said, you might want to come talk to my neighbor. So the FBI goes to McCoy's house, and they go up to knock on the door. Karen, his wife, comes to the door. Yes, can I help you? Very polite, smiling. They flash FBI, and she tries to slam the door, and they literally get 1 foot in the door. They asked, where's Richard McCoy? He was actually flying a helicopter because, remember, of the Utah National Guard. He was flying a helicopter looking for the hijacker. Karen would not consent to a search, so they sent an agent to the federal magistrate, got a search warrant, and they came back to the house, searched the house. They found 2 duffel bags in the closet. One with a flight suit and a helmet, put my luggage inside the plane. The other bag had $490,970 and a fake hand grenade. He spent the following of that $500,000. He bought a milkshake in the desert. He gave a guy where he bought that milkshake $5 to give him a ride. And the night after the hijacking, he took his wife and his sister-in-law and his 2 kids out and spent $23 on the meal. So he spent $30 of the $500,000. The FBI confirmed that handwriting. The note was McCoy's. He was arrested and charged with air piracy, tried, found guilty, was sentenced to 45 years. When asked by the judge if he wanted to say anything, he stood up and he said, yes, sir, I do. You don't have a prison that will hold me. I will escape. And the judge jokingly laughed and said, well, let's give it a shot. So he was assigned to federal prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Another thing about the FBI, why they do things like they do. You're in Salt Lake City. He's going to Lewiston, Pennsylvania. They drove him, put him in a car. When he got to St. Louis, he went in the bathroom. There was a homeless person in there. He changed clothes with the homeless person, and he was gone for about an hour and a half. They found him in St. Louis. He arrived at federal prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, January 1974. Upon entering prison, he made friends with 3 other people, all under 6 feet tall. And the reason for that was, and I'll show you in a moment, around this prison is corn. And back then, it was right up to the prison fence, basically. In January, he was already planning his escape in August. He made friends with people that were under 6 foot tall, so when they got in the corn, they wouldn't be higher than the corn. Melvin Walker was his buddy. Larry Bagley and Joseph Havel were the other 2 guys. They immediately began planning the prison break. They started in January. They'd run 50-yard wind sprints, run 50, walk 50 on Monday, run 50, walk 50. On Tuesday, pump iron all day long. Wednesday, they'd run a marathon. They'd run the prison enclosure. Thursday, start back wind sprints. They did that till August. Havel was about probably 5'8", 9, 10", small guy. I used to call him the old man. He was 60 years old. He's not, that wasn't an old man. But in 1974, 60 was old. When I got my hands on Havel, he was as hard as a brick. They were in tip-top shape. Muscles, arms, they were in perfect shape. There's the 4 of them. And there's the old man, Havel, 60 years old. Walker was 35 and 74. He's from Morley, Missouri. He made the 10 most wanted fugitive list. On November 9th, 1974, he was apprehended in Virginia Beach after entering the house staked out by the FBI. He attempted to escape by car but was arrested, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Havel was from Philadelphia, age 60 at the time of his escape. He was described by prison guards as a loner, and the guards were most surprised by him being involved in an escape. He was convicted in '67, one of 4 men in the robbery of an armored car. While serving time for that robbery, he escaped from the state prison, robbed a bank in Reading, Pennsylvania in March of '72, and was caught, convicted, and sentenced to 10 years in Lewisburg. Bagley was from Iowa, age 36 at the time. He was serving 20 years for bank robbery. Bagley, Havel, and Walker had all attempted escapes and had additional years tacked on to their sentences for these attempted escapes. There's the prison, and you can see the corn. This is more recent than what it was. It wasn't like this. In '74, the corn come all the way up to the prison. On August the 10th, '74, McCoy and 3 of his comrades climbed the fence. Every day they would watch, and a trash truck would come up, gate would open, pull in, gate closed, gate open, truck would pull around to a dumpster. One correctional officer would come out. They would watch while they emptied the dumpster. On August the 10th, at high noon, McCoy and his 3 compadres had towels, sheets, and blankets, climbed the fence, went over the fence, went to the truck. The 2 guys in the truck ran. When the correctional officer come out, they attacked him. Think about it. The towers saw what was happening. They opened fire on the truck. A trash truck is basically an armored vehicle. It's nothing but metal to handle the loads that they have to make. So ping off, didn't get hit. When they hit the first gate, they hit it so hard the gate went up in the air and come down on top of the truck. When they hit the second gate, they knocked it back, but that caused the gate on top to go up in the air and come down and literally stick in the dirt and block the prison's access to leave. To get to the road they were on, you got to go out another road and go 8 miles to get to that road. Thus, they had an 8-mile head start. FBI, in all their wisdom, at this point I usually ask, who do you think is the ringleader of this? Obviously McCoy. The FBI decided to call Tennessee, where Walker was from, and tell them all this is going on. Never told North Carolina anything at all about this. If you didn't read it in the newspaper or hear it on the news, and it wasn't much on the news, a prison escape in Pennsylvania was not on the North Carolina news. They had a 7-mile head start. Within an hour, they drove the truck into the woods. They saw a house, and they went down a path back up in the woods. They drove it. They got out. They went back to this house. At this house, there was 3 women, elderly ladies, sitting in a car waiting on one of them's husbands to come out of the house and get in the car. They were going to go into town. They approached and took them hostage, took them inside the house and tied them up. And everybody there said, all 4 of those elderly people said they were very nice to them, but they did say, don't rile us up, we're long-termers. Whatever that meant. But they said they were very nice. They basically didn't even tie the ropes very tightly, and the man was able to untie himself before they got out of the yard. And they stole their car. And talking about a head start, this elderly man had to run about a quarter of a mile down the road to get to a telephone. They didn't have a telephone. So how long did it take him to run a quarter of a mile? Here's the map. Obviously, here's Paulsville, here's Trenton, 10 Mile Fork, Cove City. And that's a little bit closer up. This is Highway 70 now, which was not there in 1974, but 41 was there, and it came out like this. But Highway 70 was not there in 1974. There's a picture of Richard Floyd McCoy. How old, looking at that, how old would you? 40s, 32 years old. And that's one of the contentions, the stewardesses, that he looked older. I can't remember if he looked older or looked younger than what he was. There's his FBI wanted poster. If you happen to find one of those, I do have one. If you go to eBay and check it out, want to buy one, you can get one for about $500. I wouldn't take $1,000 for mine. On Monday night, 12 August 1974, Trenton, North Carolina. The courthouse is over here. That's 58 going to Kinston. This is 58 going to 17 in Paulsville. This is the old Sunoco station. On that night, at about 10 o'clock, I was parked here facing this direction. There was another trooper parked beside me facing the opposite direction. And I saw this car pull up to the stoplight and make a right turn. You work a rural county, you know cars, you know people. That car did not fit in Trenton at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. But it didn't do anything, and I didn't pay it any attention, but I did log it in my memory. My buddy, the next day, said, when we knew what had happened, he said, I remember looking in the mirror and seeing it, but neither one of us said anything. Next morning, on Tuesday, August 13th, around 9:15, I had just come into Trenton from Paulsville. I turned left like I was going toward Kinston. And before I got out to city limits, the radio station called me and told me the bank in Paulsville had just been robbed. 4 white males in a dark green Monte Carlo, last seen headed north on US 17. There it is. I don't know if there's anybody old enough to remember listening to me, but there used to be a place called Diamond Jim's where the Bank of America is. That was Diamond Jim's vehicle. They went over there and stole that car from him that night. This is the bank in Paulsville. The manager's office is right here. This is a boardroom. This is the lobby. Teller line here, and this is storage back here. One of the cool things about this is I met my wife in this bank robbery. And when the robbery occurred, she was standing at the door of the manager's office talking to the door, talking to the manager. There's used to be Allen Drugs down here at the intersection of 5817, and Bill Allen, the druggist, was all the time playing pranks and messing with the girls in the bank. My wife was standing there, and all of a sudden she felt something in her back. She thought it was Bill Allen with his finger in the back. And she said, Bill Allen, what are you doing? But when she turned around, it was Richard Floyd McCoy with a .38 in her back. They robbed them. They put everybody in the vault, which was over in this corner. But due to safety features, they couldn't shut the door on the vault, which was good. When they ran out, they had parked on the wrong side of the road, facing that direction. When they ran out, everybody went to the window. That's how we knew they were in a dark green Monte Carlo. They left, traveling north on 17. There's the bank, better picture of it. This is Killis Murphy Loop Road. This is Oak Grove Road. At the end of this road right here was an old abandoned 2-story house and a great old big oak tree. They had parked the green car there, took the Ford, they had parked it there, got into Monte Carlo, robbed the bank, come back, changed cars again, come here, turned and went this way. I actually went by my house, but I wasn't living there then. When the call came in, I left Trenton. I come back into Trenton, cut over and got on 1002 and went by the Highway Commission. Got on 1002, headed towards 17, and I'm running blue light and siren, looking for a dark green Monte Carlo. About halfway down 1002, I met the Ford Fairlane, the green Ford Fairlane. And there was only 2 people in it. The 2 in the back ducked down, but again, I was looking, but I remember that's the car I saw last night. I remember that, stuck with mine. When I got to 17, I met Trooper Johnny Brown from Craven County. He called me and told me, he said, I was on 17 when they gave it out, they didn't come this way. So we turned around and went back toward Paulsville from 10 Mile Fork. And I'm thinking they had to go left. They had to go west, because if you go east, you're about a half a mile from the river. There's really nowhere to hide. So we're thinking they went west. And when we got to that in the Kills Murphy Loop Road, we saw the green Monte Carlo. We got out obviously with guns drawn, but there was nothing around the car, no evidence around the car. But we called the FBI. And everybody came up and processed the scene. Fortunately for us, the Highway Patrol helicopter was in Havelock that day doing drug eradication. We got the helicopter to come. Trooper Sullivan, F.W. Sullivan, got in the chopper with 2 FBI agents. I have 2 FBI agents in my car, and we had a deputy sheriff with an FBI agent and an ATF agent in that car. By now, the FBI has sort of got the idea that probably McCoy is the ringleader. So we're going to Cove City, air and ground, to search for him. I'm in the lead. Helicopter's over me. We go down 1002. We get to 41. We turn right to go to Cove City. And Cove City is here. Like I said, Highway 70 was not there. This is 41. But when you get right here, this is the first road in Craven County. And it's a loop road that goes around and goes back out up here. I almost think it's Wheat Swamp Road or something like that. When I get right here, and I'll show you a better picture, that's a path, and there's a path there. This is a creek that's about 20 feet wide. When we get right there, Sullivan on in the helicopter, the trooper, he calls me and says, he was 731, my call number was 732. He says, 732, I see them, they're down that first path. And this is the first path. They were right about here, and they were literally, here's the car, there's the driver's door, McCoy, Walker, Havel, and Bagley. And McCoy was actually counting the money. They were divvying up the money like that. Well, they heard the helicopter, they turned. When they turned, when Sullivan told me they were down this first path, I turned in and started down the path, and Sullivan called and he said, stop, don't go down that path. They've seen us, they're running. McCoy and Walker ran this way. If I'd have kept going, I'd have run into them. Havel and Bagley ran that way. So Sullivan called me and said, don't go down that path, back out and go down the next path. So I go here, and I'm beating it down this path, and this is literally a path. My car just couldn't get down through it, and I'm going down, bouncing all around about 35, 40 miles an hour. And he told the deputy, Sullivan told the deputy, stay on this road out here, don't go down the path. Guess what the deputy did? The deputy went down the path. Stopped right about there. Well, Havel and Bagley came running out, and I literally skidded up to their kneecaps. I almost ran over both of them. Got out, I ran Havel to the ground, and like I said, he was nothing but a ball of muscle. And I'm handcuffing him, and about the time I get the second handcuff on him, pow, 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 4 shots ring out. Well, Havel thought probably I was trying to cover him. I was actually trying to get under Havel, because those 4 shots were real close, and there was corn planted here. You couldn't see 2 feet inside that corn. But that was when McCoy was shooting at the helicopter. So the helicopter had to back off. Now we don't have, with the deputies parked here, this is wide open. We know now Walker and McCoy got in the ditch and got out, went over here to the old home place. We know now they got out that night. FBI agent told me many years ago they got out in the back of a corn truck. They actually took a reed, filled the truck with corn, and like you would see on TV, breathing through the reed. They went through a checking station. 2 deputies got in the back, and just by the grace of God didn't break those reeds. Since then, I've talked with somebody, and I believe this one. This other person told me that they put two 55-gallon drums in the back of a dump truck, pulled the lid on, didn't clamp it, but pulled the lid on, and they filled that dump truck up with dirt. Well, you can breathe. When I was telling the story one time before, somebody said, there's no corn in August. So where'd they get the corn? So I think they did it with the dump truck. I think that makes more sense. They traveled to Tennessee, then to Mississippi, Virginia Beach, and like I said, we had two of them in custody. But that's where McCoy and Walker went. They went to Virginia I know why. They rented 6 different houses in Virginia. They'd stay here one night, they'd go to this house the next night, that house the next night. As smart as McCoy was, he would do some dumb things. He was going to the same phone booth. Karen had moved back with the kids to Cove City. McCoy would go to the same phone booth and call Karen every night. Well, FBI was smart enough to put on a bug on that phone. They traced it back to that phone booth, set up on the phone booth, and saw McCoy. They followed him home so they know where he lives. They're getting ready to hit the house the next morning with McCoy and Walker inside. About the time they started to hit it, McCoy come out and left. And Walker come out and got in the vehicle and left. They stood down, and about an hour later they came back, and they said they knew something. They felt like they knew something was up because they circled the block about 4 times before they went to the house. The FBI was on the inside waiting for them, and McCoy walked up, opened the storm door, got his key, stuck it in the wooden door. He's got on a short London fog coat. When he walked in, they jump up, 3 agents jump up, say FBI freeze. He drops his grocery, opens his bag, reaches for his gun. When he comes out, he takes 3 rounds from 3 different shotguns. His last words were, "You got me." Walker's still in the car. He got under the steering wheel. After a short chase, he was caught and taken into custody. Similarities. Taken into consideration, this is fact, this is conjecture. And you can see the similarities. McCoy wore a black suit, white shirt, dark narrow tie. McCoy carried an overcoat. McCoy had a briefcase. McCoy had brown shoes on. Both smoked Raleigh filter tip cigarettes. One person, the only time McCoy ever said anything that could possibly tie him to this, John Seiler, who was the federal marshal that was taking care of McCoy in the courthouse when the trial was going on. They were taking a break, and nobody but McCoy and Seiler were in this room. And they were talking about what happened to the money. And McCoy would be the only one that would know this because he did it. He said, McCoy told Seiler that, you know, think about it. They're putting money, whoever, and he was being sort of roundaboutish. Whoever did this was putting money everywhere because he didn't have a bag big enough to put all the money in. He said, literally in his hands. So when he bailed out, some of the money from pockets and everywhere at 200 miles, 300 miles an hour, wind blast, he lost the money. Only McCoy would know that because he did that. McCoy was always short of money, and after the hijacking, he bought new tires for his car. He took his family, the whole crowd, to Cove City for a vacation and remembered the flight plan paper. There was gas bought in Las Vegas on the Volkswagen with North Carolina registration to McCoy and collect call from the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas on Thanksgiving Day. Remember, he was, Denise said he was there on Thanksgiving Day, but Denise lied. She later admitted she did. There's, I like this one better. It takes you a second to figure out which one's a photograph and which one's a composite drawing. McCoy was a student at Brigham Young studying criminal justice, And the November hijacking occurred during the Thanksgiving break. The April hijacking occurred during the Easter break. So he didn't have to account for not being in class because he was away. Class was out. Russell Kalami was the special agent in charge of McCoy's hijacking. I've talked with Russell, died 2 years ago. He and I would talk once or twice a year. Russell has no doubt McCoy and Cooper are one and the same. No doubt in his mind, McCoy and Cooper are one and the same. Stephen Reinhardt is an attorney out in Salt Lake City. For 10 years after the original bank robbery, I'd have a lot of people, not a lot, maybe twice a year, somebody would call and speak to my wife because they would find out she was in the robbery. They didn't know I was involved in it, and she never talked to anybody, but she'd say, my husband will talk to you. And I'd get on the phone. Stephen called me one time and wanted to know my involvement, and he and I became friends. Judge David Winder was a federal judge that was also McCoy's lawyer before he was a federal judge. He was McCoy's lawyer during the hijacking trial. Reinhardt says the people in Salt Lake City look at McCoy as a Robin Hood. He's more or less a hero. He's got 2 Purple Hearts, Vietnam veteran, but they look at him as sort of a hero. Reinhardt called Judge Winder one day, and Winder's wife answered the phone. And he said, Ms. Winder, this is Stephen Reinhardt, is a judge around. She said, yeah, he's out in that garden, Steve, let me go get him. She went out, and he said he could hear, Steve said he could hear her calling. And she came back, picked up the phone, said, he's on the way, he's out there in that garden. Said, I guess you want to talk about McCoy, don't you? And Steve said, yeah, and the judge's wife said, Steve, did the judge ever tell you that McCoy had this guy that was in the platoon beside of him when he was in Vietnam that he just despised? He didn't get along with him worth a flip, and that his name was Dan Cooper. And Steve said, no, ma'am, the judge never told me that, and you probably shouldn't have either. But unfortunately, the judge told David, and told Stephen, that the day would come when he would be able to talk to him and tell him things. Unfortunately, the judge died with Alzheimer's, so he took it with him to the grave. But Kalami, without a doubt, he says without a doubt, McCoy and Cooper are one and the same. The money was in $20 bills. You can jump from an airplane to live. McCoy proved this. He was killed in a shootout in November 9th. The 2 pieces of evidence was a black tie with a pearl tie tack. Black tie with a pearl tie tack. 7 years after the shootout, Kalami, the agent in charge of McCoy hijacking, Kalami and another agent goes to the FBI evidence locker. They get the tie tack, put it on the tie. They called Karen and asked Karen would she talk to him, who was McCoy's wife. She hung up. Karen sued everybody. She sued everybody in the world. She didn't sue me. She didn't sue nobody with the highway patrol. She sued the deputy that was with us, the Jones County deputy. But for some reason, she didn't sue us. I don't know if she couldn't get her name or what, but she didn't sue us. But they took that tie, they called Denise, Karen's sister, and said, will you talk to us? And Denise said yes. Denise is living with her mom now. So Kalami and the other agent fly from Salt Lake to North Carolina. They go in, they sit down, Kalami, agent, coffee table, Denise's mom. She says, I got something I want to show you. See if you can identify it. They said, okay. He reaches in the envelope, pulls out the tie and the tie tack. In unison, Denise and the mom says, that's Richard's. And they go, how do you know? And Denise said, because I bought it for him for a birthday gift. It's the only tie tack he owned. That was the tie and the tie tack that Cooper left on the plane. McCoy's widow, she denied any involvement, but in 1994, she revealed for the first time that her involvement in the 1972 hijacking during a day-long hearing in 3rd District Court, Denise Karen McCoy acknowledged that she bought her husband's parachute, helped him prepare to disguise, typed the instructions, read to the airline pilots, drove him to Salt Lake to begin the crime, and knew he took a gun and grenade aboard the plane. At 3 a.m. the next morning, she drove her husband to a field in Springfield to pick up and hide the $500,000 McCoy extorted. He hid that along with that parachute when he parachuted over Provo. Under question from her own attorney, she blamed her involvement in part on the fact that she had been severely physically and sexually abused when she was young. I always get asked what happened to the money. This is what Karen did the last couple of years of her life. She'd likely list New Zealand, Italy, particularly Florence, Great Britain, Canada among her favorite destinations. She walked the Great Wall of China, stood beneath the towering dome of the Blue Mosque, rode an elephant in Thailand, swam with dolphins in Hawaii. She basically traveled around the world several times. I don't know where she got the money to do that. McCoy's tombstone, this is unique. His mom did this. Put his social security number on it. I've asked why, and the answer I get is she wanted everybody to know without a doubt this is her son and this is where he's buried. That's what the people from Salt Lake City know him as. That's how I know it. There's some of the money that was found. There's the famous tie tack and tie, and there's the Dan Cooper receipt for the ticket. Better view the tie and the tie tack. Newsflash, December 12th, last year. Investigator Dan Grider releases the DB Cooper Deep Family Secrets on YouTube. McCoy's two kids, Richard Floyd III and Shantae Teresa McCoy, want to set the record straight. Grider's been trying for years to talk to either one of the two kids and was never able to make contact until May of 2021. He received a call from Shantae stating that she had discussed this with her brother and they wanted to set things straight. Her mom had died last year and her grandmother had died also. She and her brother have lived with this burden on them for 50 years. In the YouTube video by Dan, both kids openly admit their dad, Richard Floyd McCoy Jr., and Dan DB Cooper are one and the same. Richard's sister-in-law, Denise, also states on the video she babysitted the kids in 1971 for 4 days during Thanksgiving, and that she had lied to the FBI telling them that she was having Thanksgiving dinner with Richard and Karen, when in fact Richard and Karen were pulling the Cooper hijacking. Dan contacted me on 16 December. We finally talked on 21 December. We spent 2 hours on the phone discussing the case. We agreed on every aspect of the case, and he told me Shantae had seen my PowerPoint, and that's on YouTube. On 21 December, Shantae called me and we talked for about 45 minutes. I told her my involvement in the bank robbery and my investigation over the years. She wants everyone to know that she and her brother have carried a heavy load the last 50 years and want the world to know they are sorry. She was very sincere about being sorry. She stated she and Dan Grider would be back in Eastern North Carolina fairly soon and would contact. Now you know the rest of the story. The end.
So from 1970, mid-70s until